I used to think money would arrive with a feeling, like a moment you could point to, a clear before and after. But it never did. Life didn't change on the day I earned more. There was no celebration, no dramatic shift, no sense that things had finally worked out. It was just another normal day. Same morning routine, same phone in my hand, same quiet check not to plan anything big just to make sure nothing was wrong. And that's when I realized something strange. Money doesn't change your life all at once. It changes the rhythm you live inside. At first, nothing looks different from the outside. You still go to work. You still pay bills. You still feel tired at the end of the day. But underneath all of that, something subtle begins to shift. Decisions feel slightly less sharp. Mistakes don't echo as loudly. The future stops feeling like it's standing right behind you, waiting for you to trip. You don't notice this shift immediately. Most people don't. Because we expect progress to announce itself. We expect clarity. We expect relief. What we get instead is quiet. Quiet moments where you don't panic as quickly. Quiet pauses before reacting. Quiet gaps where life feels just a little less urgent than it used to. And those gaps matter more than most people realize. Because every financial milestone, whether it's 10,000 or much more, doesn't buy happiness. It buys distance. Distance from pressure. Distance from panic. Distance from having to decide everything right now. That's the part no one talks about. Money doesn't change who you are. It changes how close chaos sits to your everyday life. And once that distance starts to appear even in small amounts, you can't unfeel it. That's where the real change begins. The first milestone didn't feel like success. It felt like landing. Not moving forward, not winning. Just not falling anymore. $10,000 doesn't unlock freedom. It doesn't change your lifestyle. It doesn't give you confidence. What it gives you is a floor. Before that, everything feels fragile. One mistake away from stress. One delay away from panic. One unexpected bill away from replaying the same mental math over and over again. At 10,000, that edge softens. You still think about money. You still check your balance. You still hesitate before spending. But you stop bracing for impact all the time. A late charge doesn't send your heart racing. A small repair doesn't feel like a personal failure. You can fix a problem without it turning into a spiral. Nothing in your life looks impressive yet. From the outside, you're still in the same place. But inside, something important has changed. You're no longer free-falling. You can pause. You can make a small mistake and recover. You can sleep without mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios. 10,000 isn't about growth. It's about survival finally easing its grip. And that shift is quiet enough that many people miss it. But once you feel what it's like to have the ground stop disappearing beneath you, you understand something most people don't. Progress doesn't start with moving faster. It starts with not falling anymore. And that's why this first milestone matters more than it sounds. After the floor appears, something else follows. Not excitement, not ambition, space. 20,000 doesn't change how you live. It changes how you feel while living. You still budget. You still plan. You still say no to things. But money stops standing in front of every decision. You don't wake up thinking about it immediately. You don't fall asleep replaying numbers in your head. There are moments, small ordinary moments, where your attention drifts somewhere else. You choose food because you're hungry, not because it's the cheapest option that won't hurt tomorrow. You rest because you're tired, not because you finally hit a breaking point. Nothing about this looks dramatic. Most people wouldn't notice it if they were watching your life. But inside, the pressure changes shape. You're not reacting as much. You're not constantly scanning for danger. You're not measuring every choice against what it might cost you later. That mental space does something subtle. It slows you down just enough to notice how often urgency used to decide things for you. At 20,000, urgency doesn't disappear. It just stops shouting. And when urgency quiets even briefly, something new becomes possible. You don't feel rich. You don't feel ahead. You just feel present. For the first time, money isn't asking for all your attention. That breathing space doesn't stay empty for long. At 30,000, something else happens. The noise starts to fade. Not the noise outside, the noise inside. The constant background tension, the mental commentary running all day, the feeling that every pause needs to be justified. You still have problems. You still have responsibilities. Life hasn't become easier, but it becomes quieter. Decisions don't rush you the same way anymore. You don't feel the same pressure to respond immediately. You can sit with a choice instead of reacting to it. That pause is new. Before, hesitation felt dangerous. Now it feels natural. You start noticing how often your past choices were shaped by timing, not intention. How many yes decisions came from not wanting to deal with the consequences of saying no? At 30,000, you don't suddenly make better decisions. You make slower ones, and slower decisions change everything. Conversations feel less defensive. Plans feel less fragile. You stop explaining yourself as much, even in your own head. The future doesn't feel far away, but it no longer feels like it's pressing against you. There's room to think, room to wait, room to let things settle before acting. From the outside, nothing has shifted dramatically, but inside the volume is lower. And when life gets quieter, you begin to hear something you couldn't before. Your own priorities. That's what 30,000 really buys. When life gets quieter, you start noticing something else. Choice. Not big dramatic choices, small ones, the kind most people don't realize they're missing. At 50,000, you don't feel powerful. You feel unhurried. You stop saying yes out of reflex. You stop agreeing just to keep things moving. You pause before committing, not because you're unsure, but because you can afford to wait. That waiting changes your posture. You no longer lean forward in conversations. You don't feel the need to justify your boundaries. You don't rush to prove value or loyalty or urgency. You can walk away from situations that feel off. Not angrily, not dramatically, quietly. Before this point, saying no felt risky. It came with explanations, with guilt, with calculations about what you might lose. Now no is just no, not because you're confident, but because you're not cornered. Deadlines lose their grip. Pressure loses its edge. Other people's urgency stops becoming your emergency. From the outside, you still look normal. Same job, same routines, same city, but inside the shift is unmistakable. You're no longer optimizing for survival. You're choosing alignment. And that's when you realize something important. Freedom doesn't arrive as excitement. It arrives as the ability to decline, to wait, to step back, to let opportunities pass without panic. That's what 50,000 changes. Not your lifestyle, your leverage. At 100,000, something unexpected happens. Money stops talking. It's still there. It still matters. But it's no longer narrating your day. You don't check your balance out of habit anymore. You don't mentally rehearse expenses before making plans. You don't measure time in billing cycles. Money moves into the background where systems live. Automatic, predictable, unremarkable. And in that quiet, something else steps forward. Time, not free time, not vacations or long breaks, mental time. You start noticing how you spend your attention, who drains it, what restores it, which problems deserve energy and which ones don't. At this point, you're not chasing relief. Relief already happened earlier. Now you're shaping direction. You think less about what you can afford and more about what's worth the cost in hours and focus in emotional weight. You're no longer optimizing decisions to avoid pain. You're optimizing them to support the kind of life you don't want to keep escaping from. This is where many people get confused. They assume this stage feels triumphant. It doesn't. It feels ordinary, calm, stable, almost invisible. And that's the point. When money stops demanding attention, it gives something else back. Perspective. You see how much of your earlier life was shaped by pressure you didn't even recognize at the time. You don't resent it. You don't judge it. You just don't live there anymore. At 100,000, money doesn't elevate you. It steps aside. And for the first time, you're deciding your life without it standing in the middle of the room. When money fully steps aside, something unusual happens. Life stops reacting. Not because nothing goes wrong. Things still break. Plans still change. People still disappoint you. But your life no longer reorganizes itself around every disruption. At 500,000, you don't wake up responding to circumstances. You wake up inside a structure you've already chosen. Your schedule isn't built around urgency. Your decisions aren't shaped by deadlines that don't belong to you. Your attention isn't pulled by every opportunity that appears. You wait. And that waiting isn't anxious. It's intentional. You let things unfold without needing to intervene immediately. You allow silence in conversations. You allow uncertainty to exist without filling it with action. From the outside, this looks like passivity. It isn't. It's distance. Distance from chaos. Distance from noise. Distance from other people's priorities trying to become yours. Money at this level doesn't buy things. It buys insulation. Insulation from panic, from scarcity thinking, from the need to prove movement at all times. You don't rush into decisions anymore. You don't chase reassurance. You don't live inside reaction loops. Instead, life becomes something you move through deliberately. Not fast, not slow, aligned. This isn't a finish line. There's no sense of arrival, just a quiet understanding. Your life is no longer controlled by what happens next. It's guided by what you've already decided matters. Looking back, the milestones don't line up the way people expect. They don't feel like levels. They don't feel like wins. They feel like distance. Distance from urgency. Distance from panic. Distance from the constant pressure to decide everything right now. Each number didn't make life better overnight. It just moved chaos a little farther away. 10,000 gave you ground. 20,000 gave you air. 30,000 lowered the noise. 50,000 gave you room to refuse. 100,000 moved money out of the spotlight. And 500,000 built structure strong enough that life no longer had to react. None of these moments announced themselves. There was no finish line tape, no applause. Most days still felt ordinary. But the way you moved through those days was different. You stopped living on the edge of the next problem. You stopped mistaking urgency for importance. You stopped measuring your worth by how fast you could respond. Money didn't change who you were. It changed where you were standing. Closer to calm, farther from fear. Just enough distance to see your life clearly. Not everyone needs to reach the last number. Most people don't. But almost everyone recognizes the moment when life stops pushing them forward and starts opening up instead. That moment isn't about wealth. It's about space. Space to choose. Space to wait. Space to live without bracing for impact. And once you felt that shift even briefly, you understand something that's hard to explain. Progress isn't louder. It isn't faster. It's quieter. And it stays with you. ChatGPT có the Mac Loi. Hãy kiểm tra các thông tin quan trọng. Vui lòng tham khảo tweet on cookie.